Hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of Berkeley Live, Where in the World? My name is Rick Russo. I'm the Dean of Summer Sessions, Study Abroad, and Lifelong Learning here at UC Berkeley. Today we have 3 students who are currently studying abroad in London, Taiwan, and Toronto. We're going to be talking about study abroad, which really is a big part of Chancellor Dirk's 3 initiatives, 3 pillars of his inaugural strategy for UC Berkeley. One of those being internationalization, and the other being undergraduate education. So study abroad is a really high priority here for our students. We want all of them to have study abroad experiences. About 3 years ago, when my division was created and I was appointed dean, the goal was set to triple the number of students going abroad from UC Berkeley. At the time, we had about 1,000 students going abroad annually. We're currently at 1,500 students going abroad annually. So we've grown 50%. We're halfway to tripling at 3,000 students. So lucky for me, all we have to do now is double the number of students going abroad. I'm going to be asking our students some questions, and they will be answering one after another. And then please feel free to post your questions to the question function, and they'll be fed to me, and I can ask them those questions as well. So once again, thanks for joining us. And my first question is to each of our students. I think first I'll ask Carmen to answer in London. Tell us about yourself, what you're studying at UC Berkeley, and what you're doing abroad. Carmen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen, and I'm going to be a sophomore at UC Berkeley, and I'm intended double major in business and media studies. And currently I'm in London, United Kingdom, studying at the London School of Economics, and I'm taking classes in communications as well as international relations.
Great, thanks, Carmen. How about James? Can you tell us what you're studying at Berkeley and what you're doing abroad?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Shyh-Herng. I go by James. I am a 4th-year molecular and cell biology student, and I currently studying in Taiwan, doing research about biomedical image processing at NTU, which stands for National Taiwan University.
Great, thank you, James. Louie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Louie. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and I studied sociology and minored in Luso-Brazilian language. At Cal, I'm officially done with my undergraduate degree in about a week, and I'm currently working at a city councilor's office here in Toronto, and I'm also taking a course on Canadian politics at the University of Toronto.
Great, Louie. Thanks for that. Our next question is, why did you choose to study in your particular country? Carmen.
Okay, so the reason why I chose my particular country, well, a very basic reason is because it's an English-speaking country, and I will not have to learn a different language. But the main thing I really wanted to focus on, I guess, was international relations and business. And I felt like I think Europe is really ahead in the Western world in terms of communications and media. And I know LSE is second in the world in social sciences behind Harvard, so I thought that studying abroad here would be perfect. And it's actually always been my dream to come to Europe. I've only ever been in the United States and like parts of Asia, so I just thought it was perfect, and the accent's really cool. Yeah.
Great, Carmen. Thanks so much, and I'm glad your dreams are coming true. James, how about you?
Okay, so yeah, I would like to let you guys know about the fact that I'm actually a Taiwanese. So maybe studying at UC Berkeley is no more likely than a study abroad to me. But so I have been in the States for like 6 years since I was a high school junior in 2008, and it's my pleasure to enjoy my academic life as a Berkeley student. However, my motivation behind this study abroad experience was because NTU was my dream long before I realized that my family decided to move to the States. And thanks to the decision by UC Berkeley's study abroad program, I'm able to actualize my dream and become an ambassador from UC Berkeley and interact with the top university in my home country and its students.
James, thank you for that. Sounds like a lot of dreams have been coming true. I'm glad to know that there's 2 so far. Louie, what dreams are coming true for you?
Well, one of my dreams has been to have the opportunity to travel. What I should have said in my introduction is that this is actually my 3rd time studying abroad. I studied twice in Brazil. I spent an entire year in Rio actually prior to coming to Canada. So, being able to transition from one city to the next has been really interesting, but also an invaluable experience. Carmen mentioned the language aspect, so I think one parallel of being in Canada as opposed to Brazil is, the language is definitely something that I can master with English. But the reason that I chose this particular program is because I'm getting ready to graduate, as I had mentioned earlier, and I want relevant work experience to become, a better candidate for long-term jobs, and also masters. I do want to pursue education after Cal, which is essentially what I'm trying to do right now. And yeah, it's been an interesting combination of having like the work aspect. This particular program that I'm in has more so emphasis on gaining work experience and professional development, and there is an aspect of being in an international setting and also taking a local course as well. But again, I think in terms of dreams, it has really this opportunity, and also being at Berkeley in itself has opened my eyes to how really large the world is and how many opportunities are available. And I think the sooner that you are integrated into all of this, the sooner you can take advantage of all of that. So that's one of the things that I really appreciated about knowing about studying abroad at Cal really early on in my undergraduate career.
Really great. Thanks for answering that. So are you at the Global Internship Program in Toronto?
I am. I'm participating in global internships. I was on an EAP program up until June 12th, so I really transitioned from one country to the next in a matter of like one flight.
Wow, wow, good to know. Thank you for that. Our next question, what are some of the cultural differences between your country that you're currently studying in and Berkeley? Carmen.
I think there aren't that many cultural differences. I guess the biggest thing would just be the whole language thing. Like in class the other day, I asked someone where the rubbish bin was, and then I burst out laughing because I just cannot say rubbish bin. Like trash can makes so much more sense. But I think academically and I guess culturally, a lot of people in London, a lot of students specifically, they're less inclined to like speak out during class discussions. Like I know in Berkeley, in lectures, like professors really encourage people to raise their hand and stuff. But here, if you raise your hand, lecture's kind of like, okay, just wait. Like I'm still talking. And I think that was a really big difference. It might just be Berkeley, and other universities aren't like that. But here in London specifically, it's kind of like, I don't know, looked down upon to just kind of like speak out. And on the streets around London, I would say people are. It reminds me of New York. People walk really, really fast, and if you walk slowly and act like a tourist, they don't really appreciate that. So.
Interesting. All right, thank you. James, how about in Taiwan? How's that different from the U.S.?
So I believe, of course, I believe there's a difference between the States and in Taiwan. So I feel like Berkeley is known to be one of the most liberal universities in the States. And students at Berkeley tend to express their opinions and their thoughts openly, while students at NTU make holistic judgment before they act. And I believe that it is a really self-explanatory difference between the East and the West culture.
Great, thank you. And Louie, how about in Toronto? How different is that from Berkeley?
It's very similar to the United States as a whole. Like being here kind of sort of reminds me of being in San Francisco. In terms of Berkeley, I think Berkeley is a very unique city that has its own culture that you kind of sort of get the vibe for when you are there. If anything, I would say like being in Brazil felt more different than more like an international experience than currently here. Again, being in a different country where they speak a different language, it felt more of like an eye-opening experience in terms of, like, oh, I am the other, as opposed to, when I am in California, I always viewed, we have a large international student population, which I had always appreciated, and Berkeley's diversity is amazing. So I think just to me, understanding myself as being on the opposite end was something that I thought was really interesting. But I think more than anything else, what for me personally is most different is getting acclimated from being in a classroom setting to being put into a more professional work environment. Mm-hmm. But all in all, I feel like, there are little subtleties here and there in the way that people speak English, but it definitely feels a lot like home.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So our next question, while you're abroad, and you're interacting with some of the locals, maybe you're the faculty there or people you've met on the street or in your residence halls, have those people heard of Berkeley, and what do they think about it? Carmen.
Yeah, so I definitely have the answer to this question because in my classes and like around the streets, I've met a lot of different people from countries all over the world, and they have all heard of Berkeley. And when I tell them I go to UC Berkeley, they kind of like do a double take, and they're like, wait, University of California at Berkeley? Because in their countries, Berkeley is actually on par with Harvard, Columbia, Princeton, like the Ivy Leagues, and they often think that Berkeley is an Ivy League, and I actually have to kind of like clarify, I'm like, oh, we're actually a public university, but yes, we're just as amazing. So yeah, Berkeley is really famous worldwide, and they all think it's an amazing school, and apparently in a lot of universities in like Italy, Brazil, Australia, to be specific, like it's very, very hard to study abroad at UC Berkeley, and to hear that you go there, they're just really amazed, and I was actually really amazed that they were like really surprised and have heard of it as well. So.
All right, well, I'm glad to hear that. James, how about you? What's the reputation of UC Berkeley in Taiwan?
So just as Carmen said, I believe that, I always think that Berkeley is a well-known brand in Asian countries, and many Asians, including us Taiwanese, always long to have the opportunity to have a peek, a visit, or even become a formal UC Berkeley student. And my student peer advisors in NTU program were really surprised that a Taiwanese Berkeley student choose to participate in a program meant to be designed for foreigners. And some of them were actually the incoming student of my Taiwanese high school the year when I was about to leave Taiwan for the States. So like we even call each other brothers as they realized that I was the alumnus of my Taiwanese high school. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Thank you for that. And Louie, how about Brazil and Toronto? What do they think of Berkeley?
Berkeley's built quite a reputation for itself in terms of academic excellence, and I think that has followed me in all of my travels in Latin America and even here in Toronto. And I've had an interesting opportunity of running into former Cal alumni in some of my travels. I was in Peru in December, and that was also really interesting. But a lot of people are aware of, Berkeley's long history of political activism and the academic rigor, and they do see this as a prestigious institution, and a lot of people are very receptive and very interested in knowing more about what life in California is like, what life in Berkeley is like, what classes at Cal are. So I think for me it's been an amazing opportunity to serve sort of as a representative of, the school that I love very much and has taught me so much as well.
Okay, great. It's good to know from all of you what a strong reputation Berkeley has around the world, and that we're perceived in such high esteem. A question just came in from Ram Kapoor, which I'll ask each of you. Do you miss Berkeley? Carmen, how about you start?
Yeah. I have to say yes. It's not even a question. Of course I miss Berkeley. Just being abroad and being at studying in London right now, I can say I miss the trivial things. Like I miss the cheap price of Thai food and how there's bubble milk tea everywhere in Berkeley, and how here I can't find that anywhere, and just it's less diverse culturally and everything. But it's just, when I think about, I really miss home right now. I'm actually really homesick, but I think about Berkeley, and it's just home to me. And I don't miss my parents, sadly. I don't miss my home very much, like in terms of where I'm actually from. But when I think of home, I think of like my old dormitory at Berkeley and like the campus, and hearing the campanile every morning. It makes me really, really sad. So I'll be really happy when fall semester starts, because when you study abroad, you'll definitely miss your school and everything about it.
Well, good. We'll look forward to having you back here on campus in September. How about you? You miss Berkeley?
Yeah. So when I was at Berkeley, I usually miss my home, and I'm actually in my home right now. So yeah, I miss Berkeley. I miss the cultural diversity over there. I feel like Berkeley actually fosters me to become a really brave individual to express my opinions, because I would say back in Asian countries, back in Taiwan, we're not it's just it's kind of really big comparison. So like we're not really encouraging students to express opinions. We basically just keep listening and let the professors speak and talk. But like at Berkeley, I feel like I can stand out from the crowd and just raise my hand and tell everybody my opinions according to like what the professors were talking about. We can discuss. I feel like that kind of liberal mindset, it actually just makes me feel like I'm part of Berkeley student.
Great, great. Well, we'll be looking forward to having you back here as
Thank
well.
you.
Sounds like you missed some of the things that Carmen misses too, about being able to speak up and express your opinion in your classes. How about you, Louie? You've been gone a while. Do you miss
I have, and at the sake of sounding cliche, I would really say that absence makes the heart grow stronger. It's been about a little over a year since the last time I was on the Berkeley campus, so I'm definitely excited to be able to go back and to be back as an alumni, something that I can carry with myself, carry with a lot of pride. But anyhow, I mean, I really do miss the Bay Area. I miss Berkeley. I miss campus. I miss Thai food. I miss like really cheap and really good pizza on Telegraph as well. But I think more than anything else, a lot of being away, I try to see similarities or things that remind me of being in Berkeley or just the culture of our campus, because like I mentioned beforehand, it is very unique and very special. So I think going away, as much as sometimes it does feel a little difficult, really helps put things in perspective in the sense of, being able to go to a class and voice your opinion where that is the norm, and little things that you do take for granted, you come back with a different scope and are able to gauge yourself in a different context, which you probably or potentially couldn't have noticed if you didn't leave in the first place.
Louie, thank you. So did I hear you correctly? You're looking forward to coming back as an alumni. Are you graduating at the end of your program?
Yes, so I'm actually just waiting on my credits from EAP to be processed, and I will officially have finished my undergraduate degree, and I will be visiting the campus at the end of August, so I'm looking forward to that, very much so.
Okay, great. So now I would like you all to think about what has been your most interesting experience or story that you want to tell us about what's happened to you while you've been abroad. James, since you're on the screen, how about you? Do you have any interesting stories since you've been abroad?
Sure. So I would like to say that I have been in a themed restaurant named Modern Toilet. So it's a restaurant filled with toilets and bathtubs. As you guys, I'm gonna show you guys the picture here. So as you guys can see, like, can you guys see on the screen?
A little higher.
So as you guys can see, like, this is actually so my friend An, like, she was eating her curry served in the toilet in a toilet bowl. Yeah, and it's really fun to see that. I mean, I actually saw a lot of Americans like coming into this to the restaurant and like kind of order some really peculiar ice desserts, and I really enjoy that. And yeah, it kind of smells, but yeah.
How about
really
you,
cool.
Carmen? Carmen, do you have any interesting
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you. Oh, yeah. I guess I did a lot of fun things here in London, like eating fish and chips and going in the London Eye and seeing the Big Ben. But I think the most interesting story I would say is like more in an academic setting. In my communications class, we watched an airing of a Q&A with the Prime Minister of England, like David Cameron, and they were like showing the House of Commons, and I was just really astounded at the difference between, I guess, like British politics and American politics, because I watch C-SPAN a lot back in America, and you see like congressional meetings, and like you see senators just kind of sitting there, and it's really like laid back and kind of really boring unless you kind of like know what issues they're talking about. But then here it was just so interesting to me because you see these like prime ministers, they stand up and they like shout at each other and yell at each other and call each other names, and there's like a gavel. It just seems like from many years ago, like centuries ago, when really it's actually like it happened like a couple weeks ago. So that was really different, like just politics, just seeing the difference. That was for me.
Great, thank you for sharing. Louie, what's your most interesting story?
When I had initially arrived to Rio, which was about July of last year, So World Youth Day was being hosted in the city, so I was able to go to Copacabana Beach, world famous, beautiful beach, but it had been changed because the Pope, we were receiving the Pope, so there were about 3 million people on the beach for a live mass, and the Pope Mobile drove right in front of me, and I think I was just in awe because I the idea that that was actually happening to me was just so surreal. You know, even the fact that I'm not necessarily extremely religious, that just being able to see such a renowned world figure in person to me was extremely. I'm at a loss for words right now, but it was incredible. It was incredible, and I think about how, you know, like, I was in the right place and at the right time, and a lot of things just lined themselves up for me to be able to be there at that moment. So it was incredible, you know, and I told my parents, and they're like, "Oh, wow, you saw the Pope Mobile?" I was like, "Yes, I have pictures. I'll email them to you right now." So that for me was really exciting.
Sounds very powerful. Glad you had that experience. We have a question that's come in from Linda. She's asking, is there something you wish you had known in advance to prepare you for this experience? Carmen.
Yeah, I guess one thing I would say that would have prepared me for this experience is that before coming here, I wanted to do everything London, like everything the UK and England. So I didn't necessarily bring anything that would remind me of home, if that makes any sense. I think this kind of goes back to like remembering like where you come from, but I don't know, like I know some people that brought like their Berkeley and Cal t-shirts, and I was like, no, I'm going to go and buy a lot of LSE t-shirts, just like, because I'm studying London School of Economics. So I was just like thinking of all these things, but now that I think about it, I should have brought, like, I don't know, more things that reminded me of my family or Berkeley. Yeah, and also, I guess like the money conversion rate, I did not realize how much money the difference is between like US dollars and like the British pound, and actually, the person who asked this question, Linda, she donated money to my personal campaign to come to London. So thank you, Linda, and for watching this. So yeah, that's my answer.
Great. Well, thank you to Linda as well. James, how about you? What do you wish you had known to prepare you for this experience?
So as I have said, Taiwan is actually my home country, so it's actually my home base. So I actually know a lot of stuff here, any story, any details, but in fact, I was in like, so my major is like, again, molecular and cell biology. The project I'm currently doing is about like biomedical image processing, and it's actually more computer science based. So it requires me to do a lot of programming, and I felt like to be honest, I felt a little bit not really prepared, because I actually didn't have any basic understanding or skills about like this computer programming. But I mean, I really appreciate that my mentor and my advisors helping me. But I still, I mean, deep in my heart, if I could if I could know like more details about like how, or if I could learn some programming beforehand in advance, I think I can enjoy more experience here. But I have already enjoyed my life here. I have already enjoyed my lab, I really enjoy like programming, that kind of stuff. It's really fun. It's really new to me, and I'm really open to that.
That's great. I'm glad you're discovering something new. Louie, how about you? What do you wish you had known in advance for either of your study abroad sites?
Well, I mean, again, since this was my third time, I feel like every time it becomes a little bit more easy. But with that said, to piggyback off of what Carmen mentioned beforehand, I think the money aspect is something that you always have to take into consideration. I think personally, I would have done a little bit more research in terms of the conversion, in terms of what would be the most appropriate way to budget money as well. Because it's very easy to get caught up in the excitement of being in all of these amazing places that sometimes you can lose track of the dollar and forget how far that dollar can take you. So I think budgeting is something that, you know, people had told me beforehand, and I had been in contact with former alumni of the programs that I had embarked on. But it's one of those lessons that I don't think I really wholeheartedly learned until I was on the ground, being able to figure it out for myself. And that's part of the learning process. I think that you know, a lot of it varies on the individual, and as much as someone tries to prepare you, life throws unexpected curves at you, so sometimes you have to adapt. But with that said, budgeting is really important if you want to study abroad.
Okay, great, Louie. Thank you for that. And for any students that are listening, you should know that there are financial aid advisors that are available in Stevens Hall in the Study Abroad office to talk to you about financing your study abroad program. So it's our goal to get all of you abroad, so don't see finances as an obstacle, see it as an opportunity for us to perhaps assist you with financing your study abroad experience. There's a question that came in a little bit earlier from Leslie Carlson. Were your parents supportive of you studying abroad, or did you have to do any convincing? Carmen.
Yeah, so the answer to that question, my parents were really supportive. They definitely wanted me to study abroad and just learn about like a different culture and go to Europe, obviously. But the only problem, like the only thing holding them back basically was the financial issues, because studying abroad is pretty expensive. But I guess one thing I have to like advice to future study abroad people is like don't try to rely on your parents too much, because I know a couple students here that were just like worried about money because they're worried that their parents wouldn't I guess like help them out and give it to them if they needed it. But I think the main thing you should do is like before studying abroad, like do find a job and learn about like get the details about your financial aid and like try to do an internship and if you really like what I did was that I started a GoFundMe campaign which I basically explained why I was studying abroad. I wrote a really detailed like kind of like an essay about it as to like why it would help me, and I sent it to a couple of like people that I believed might want to help me out, and actually like received a lot of, surprisingly I received a lot of donations from like old teachers and like scholarship mentors that I've had in the past. Like they all really wanted to help me out and like heard that I was studying abroad and they just thought it was just amazing. So do that, and don't rely on your family for money, because you can't do that forever. So that's what I have to say.
Great. James.
Yeah, so I would like to say the same thing, except I just feel like Berkeley is really generous. Like Berkeley scholarship actually covers most of my costs for the attendance. So the only thing is like I have to buy the plane ticket and be able to pay for the dorm fee. So I actually lived in the dorm like for the past few weeks, but I just really want to chat with you guys. So I want to get prepared. I just coming back home and sit in front of the screen and talk to you guys. But yeah, I mean mostly like I still have like few $100 that I actually have to when I go back to Berkeley, I'm gonna cover it with part-time job, so that I can just feel like I'm not the burden of my family, but I actually earn the money and just pay back to my study abroad experience.
Great. Thank you. And James, I'm sorry, Louie, were your parents supportive, or did you have to cajole them a little bit?
My parents, I feel very fortunate to say, were very supportive about my endeavors. I think part of the fact that my parents are, they're originally from a different country, so they were just kind of sort of more curious as to why it is that I wanted to leave. But they were very supportive in my decision, in the sense of they're like, oh, we're definitely going to miss you, but anything that's advancing your education, anything that's beneficial to you and your future, we support. So that was something that I was very, very, very appreciative of, and definitely made the process a lot easier. And with that, every time that I would embark on a different trip to travel, I gave them some sort of advance notice. It was more so, I think for me, they weren't necessarily as key in terms of my decision process, in the sense of my mind was made up. I knew that this was something that I wanted to do for myself, but I definitely let them know that there were different ways in which we could stay in contact with each other, and I would let them know about the different things that I was experiencing, different places that I would visit. And I think for them, given that they attempted to come visit me in Brazil and it didn't work out, it was a way of them vicariously getting to know the country through me. So, with that said, I thank you, Mom and Dad. I don't know any easier way to put it.
Great, thank you, Louie. Another question that's come in from a viewer: has your study abroad experience changed the way you look at American politics and culture? Carmen, what do you think?
Yes, this goes back to what I said before about seeing the House of Commons meeting and the British Prime Ministers and how it was very different from American Congress. But going along that, I guess like one thing I've realized about American culture is that it also ties back to, I feel like, Berkeley itself, how open-minded we are, how diverse we are, how we learn to kind of speak our opinions, and just I feel like London, although it is very like advanced, it's still not like that yet. And just if you're on the street, okay, so for one example is like really strange, but if you take public transportation here in London, it's deathly quiet. People on the bus and the subway, they don't talk at all, and if you are a little bit loud, they just kind of glare at you. And it's just really strange. You can't talk about, like, you have to talk about normal things like the weather, and if you ask someone, like I asked like a Londoner like about like what they did like last night or what they did yesterday, and they're like, oh, can we just like talk in private? It was just strange. It was really strange. So culturally, I guess like America is more open, and also just racially diverse, so they're more open to opinions.
Okay, great, thank you. James, how about over in Taiwan? Has it changed your view on American politics and culture?
I feel like most of the things, like, to me, especially like culturally and also politically, I feel like they all look really positive to me. I mean, I really appreciate that I have the chance to come to America and to learn the best education here at Berkeley. And like, speaking of politics, I wouldn't make a really strong comment on it, as I still a Taiwanese, and I just feel like I'm not really sure. I mean, to me culturally, I feel like it's not really polite to comment on other countries like politics. But if you want to ask me like something really culturally, I would say I feel like Americans are more open, and they're really brave. They really like to talk whatever they want to say, and I just feel like I can understand this person more decently, and then we can make a really strong information exchange between me and other people, and I just feel like it's a really I feel like I really like that communication way.
Great, thank you, James. And Louie, how about you? How was your opinion of American politics and culture changed?
I interpreted the question a little bit differently, in the sense of, I initially thought of globalization when this was asked, in the sense of like, when I was in Latin America, I had the opportunity to be in Brazil, in Panama, and I also went to Peru. But with that, like, I just thought of how American culture kind of sort of follows you essentially everywhere, in subtle things of like what you see on television and what you hear on the radio. And a lot of people are very interested in learning like to speak English, and a lot of people really want that opportunity to be able to go to the United States. So I think for me, it made me very appreciative, again, as I reflected on my own personal experience, and being from the States, it's like, wow, it's a privilege. And as much as I guess on the political aspect, that our country, like anywhere else, has its fair share of issues, ultimately I think that I learned by being away subtle functional things within bureaucratic systems that in the United States, while I didn't necessarily notice it then and there, were more efficient than some of the other places that I had visited beforehand. And that's, I think, for me, just something that, again, by being removed from the immediate situation, I was able to realize, like, oh, okay, so this is done differently in Brazil or in Canada, and not necessarily to say it's either better or worse, but my point of reference was just very different, and I think for me it affirmed my political ideologies a little bit more for myself as well.
Okay, great, thank you. So, a question from Avital Martin. how do your classes compare to the ones you've taken at Berkeley? So you mentioned a little bit of the differences at the London School of Economics. Carmen, do you want to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that I guess professors and lecturers, they're not really into like students participating during lecture, and I guess we also so the way the classes work here is that you have like kind of like a 3-hour lecture, and then you have a discussion section, which is very similar to Berkeley. But I feel like one thing Berkeley does that I guess like I guess professors here don't is that Berkeley doesn't really care if you do your homework or not, or if you study. Basically, if you're screwed, you're screwed. They don't really care because like it's your own education, and they know that students will like have that passion, motivation to learn. But here at LSE, I believe that professors, they really like make sure you do your homework. Like if during discussion they will ask you really specific questions about the reading, and they'll call on you, and if you don't know it, they're like, why didn't you do your homework? And it kind of reminds me a bit about like elementary, maybe like high school, middle school. It's just I think like Berkeley has that level of maturity. Not saying that LSE students don't, but it's just different in that sense. And also just like what I said before about like raising your hand in class and like saying certain things. At LSE here, the students are from all over the world. So a lot of the times, more of like discussion, it focuses on your own country. Like when people raise their hand, they'll be like, well, in my country, like they do it like this, instead of more like it's not like a bad or like good thing. It's just kind of like an observation that I had.
Great, thank you, Carmen. James, how about for you?
So for me, the program is actually composed of two parts. So one part is like introduction to Taiwanese culture, which I already know, and the other part is like the main part, the lab presentation. So I'm actually gonna have the lab presentation tomorrow. So we just have to make the PowerPoint slides and also be able to speak up in front of people. But for like when I say when I say like Taiwanese introduction to Taiwanese culture, that class is actually kind of like, so it talks about the food culture, it talks about the music culture, it also talks about the tea drinking culture in Taiwan, and mostly it's like it's a really easy class. Like I mean, if I were not a Taiwanese, I would also think it was. I also thought that was actually easy because like you just sit in the lecture hall and you just keep listening to your professors, like speaking, talking about things and playing the slides, and like basically like there are a few people, I mean not few, but like there are some people raising their hands because they are not familiar with Taiwanese culture, but mostly like for that class, we also just had to do the group presentation, and it's really fun to discuss with different people about like how they understand Taiwanese from the point of view of a Taiwanese. Because I mean, I really want to know that how people understand, how people perceive, how people understand the culture in Taiwan, and it's really interesting to see that like from a Taiwanese view.
Great, thank you, James. Louie, maybe you can compare and contrast for us Brazil, Toronto, and Berkeley.
Okay. So I've had similar experiences in the sense that lecture is solely that. It's lecture. You go to class and you listen to well, at least when I was in Brazil, I was studying at PUC Rio, and it's this general setup is you listen to your professor lecture for about an hour or 2 hours. So I think for me, I really miss discussion, and one thing that I really came to appreciate because I didn't have it was office hours. Professors aren't as, well, I wouldn't necessarily say they're as available, but you know, just having that allotted time to be able to answer specific questions in a private environment, I really didn't realize how advantageous it was until I didn't necessarily have it. And another interesting thing about Brazil is that when you study something, you study that. So when you apply to college, for example, let's say you want to study biology, then all of your courses are only in biology. So I think for me, using my general education requirements as a point of reference, I really appreciated having the opportunity to study things outside of my concentrated field of study. And I think, you know, that interdisciplinary aspect really broadened my perspective with respects to academia. And then paralleling that to Toronto, Canada's educational system seems very similar to that in the United States. I think one of the interesting things is that I asked some of my classmates, like, oh, how is this different, or how this would be different in the United States, and I think the largest difference would be like the size of classes. I'm currently in a senior seminar, so we started out with 20 students. Right now we're currently 12, but it reminded me of the senior seminars at Cal. But also, I asked what would the largest class at a university like U of T be like, and I was told that it would range between 150 to 200 students. So then I thought, you know, taking a class, for example, at Wheeler where there's 700 students, so the class sizes are a major difference in that. But in terms of structure, studying at U of T has been similar in the sense of, you know, you're given a syllabus, you have your outline readings, your instructor is available to you outside of class, and the most common form of communication is email. So it seemed very familiar in that sense.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Louie. So I'm wondering if all of you could think about what was the biggest challenge that you faced on your program, and how has it changed you? You can tell us a story about the challenge if you like, and maybe what it's done to change you as a person. Carmen, how about you go first?
Okay. I think one challenge I had in my class would be sort of academic as well, but so we had to write an essay. It was kind of an assignment, and the topic I chose was like military, like drone warfare, etc. And I actually, so adding on to Lou's point, office hours is really rare here as well. So I actually talked to my professor. I told him, I was like, can I speak to you like privately after class about my essay? And he was like really surprised that I wanted to talk to him. He thought it was really strange. But I was just like discussing with him about, I guess, like military tactics and like things that are going on currently in military policy. And he, like, one big criticism he had of my paper was that it was too like United States focused. Kind of, I think if you're studying abroad, you should like not be well versed on foreign issues, but just kind of like have an open mind and research international issues, like how it affects different countries, as instead of just like the United States, which is what I was doing. And that was a big challenge for me, just kind of like understanding how policies affected other countries, because I'm like a really patriotic person, so I was like, oh, this is like great for America and like what it's doing here, but like they're like, oh, what about like third world countries? Like how is it affecting them? So kind of general.
Great, thank you, Carmen. James, how about for you? What's been your biggest challenge, and how did it change you?
So yeah, as I say, my biggest challenge was the computer programming part, and like for my project, it is about like the PET and MRI, which stands for the positron emission tomography, and also MRI stands for magnetic resonance image. So it's just medical images that I have to like kind of first do the reconstruction part, and later on do the co-registration, which means like put those two images together, because one of them has one benefit and the other one has the other benefits, and it's like everything has to be done on computer, and it's just like, you know, when I look at the codings and all that, it actually kind of like makes me a little bit like, I don't know. At first I didn't know what's going on over here, but like once I realized that, hey, this coding stands for this one. Okay, this loop, this computer for loops, like it goes like scanning this part and then make it repeat all the time and again and again. And I just realized I can close my eyes and imagine like everything is just in my mind. And yeah, but it's still a little bit challenging, and I still would like to ask the professor if she allows me to stay more time in the program. I mean, after the program, if I'm still able to stay in her lab, because I really want to get more understanding with her project.
James, thank you. That does sound challenging. I'm glad you're diving into it. Louie, how about you? What have your challenges been?
Prior to doing the year abroad at Brazil, the longest I'd ever been away from home was, I think, 3 months. So I think being away from home for that long, I definitely had an amazing experience. And I think by being gone for as long as I was very able to fully immerse myself into the city. But with that said, I went through waves of, you know, being happy and being unhappy, and just the frustrations of, oh, I want to go home, or I want to see my family, or I want to see my friends from Cal, but they're so far away. So that was something that definitely took some getting used to, and I think seeking support in the sense of, you know, like what your university offers you, or what your community, your immediate community, like your classmates or your professors, like really tuning into that and finding other methods of staying into communication is key. And yeah, so I mean, homesickness is normal, and it's one of those things that you hear about often when you talk about traveling, and I think normalizing that experience and recognizing that, you know, you could potentially face moments like that, and choosing active ways of like coping and moving forward is really what helped me make it through the entire year. And right now in Toronto, it's a completely different experience in the sense of I'm closer to home than I was beforehand, but I'm facing a different set of challenges in the sense of now the program that I'm in is more focused on work experience. So definitely getting acclimated to the 9-to-5 routine was rough for me in the beginning, in the sense that I had worked, you know, I had worked my fair share of jobs before, and I had been in office environments in the past, but never for that many hours continuously on end. So it was definitely something that I had to get used to, and it's not necessarily a burden in the sense of like you know, most people, depending on what type of profession you get into, will deal with that and learn how to get acclimated. So that's one of the skills that I think I could potentially leave here, is knowing how to be able to get used to a different type of routine.
Louie, thank you for that. I'll tell you, 20 years into it, I'm still getting used to having to be at an office 8 hours a day. It is a long day. So, speaking of challenges, I think this may be our last question. We'll see how long it takes for us to answer it. What advice would you give to any students considering studying abroad? You know, what would your words of advice be to them? Carmen.
Yeah, so words of advice. I would say just do it if you're, because I know a lot of people they're not really sure whether or not they should, and like there's like a whole financial reason, like the academic reasons, but I think ultimately it really does affect you in a really positive way. And also just one big piece of advice I have is always like just keep an open mind in terms of everyone you meet. Like coming here, I originally was like just hanging out with like my few friends from UC Berkeley, but then over time I just like randomly started talking to strangers in my class, and you end up learning so much more about different countries, like different cultures, like what's happening in Brazil. Like I know there was a whole controversy about the World Cup, and I spoke to someone who's actually from like that city, and it's just really like mind-opening. There's that, and just I guess after you go back home to America, like from study abroad, like make sure that you always like keep in contact with these people, because right now, because LSE has 2 sessions, and session 1 is over. It was over last week, and I was in another class, but a lot of people left. But I'm still talking to people that was in that class, and after studying abroad ends, I'm going to Italy for a couple days, and I'm staying with a person that I just met, but we're like really good friends now. So it's just insane, like the people you'll meet and like the experiences you have. So definitely do study abroad.
Great, Carmen. I think that's great advice. Just do it. I agree. James, how about you? What's your advice?
Well, my advice will be a little bit biased since I am a Taiwanese, so it's really easy. It's really easy, like relatively easier for me to talk to like Taiwanese student advisors and the Taiwanese teachers, professors. But I mean, I realized that like my peers from other UC campuses or like peers from UC Berkeley, they're really willing to talk to me. I mean, as a local, and also they are also willing to talk to the student advisors, be friend with them. So I think Carmen's point is a really clear point that if you go study abroad, you have to be able to speak, talk to the locals, get more understanding, get the most decent part of the culture, and then like it will be really a rewarding experience to you. I believe so.
Thank you, James. Also good advice. And Louie, as our resident expert on study abroad, what are your words of wisdom for potential students?
So I mentioned beforehand I used to work at the Berkeley Study Abroad offices, and I think that visiting is essential in the sense of if you are even considering it slightly, visiting the offices and really utilizing your resources at Berkeley to figure out whether this is feasible and possible for you. I mean, there's never been any harm in asking questions, and the travel community is one that is very easily integrated to, in the sense of, once you embark on these journeys, you are a little bit more inclined to put yourself out there. So I would really challenge someone thinking about it to really ask what it is that they want out of their experience at Cal, and what it is that they would want out of traveling. And I think that if someone is really passionate about making it happen, it definitely is possible. So being able to talk to study abroad advisors or academic advisors and seeing how it is that you can make this happen, how it is that you can pay for it, things to look forward to. Talking to someone that was there, like, past alumni, is essential. And again, with that said, I think that as much as you try to prepare yourself for something like this, it's one of those things that you don't necessarily fully grasp until you're there, wherever there is, London, Taiwan. And I think sometimes it's normal to feel a little nervous about changing a routine, but again, I would highly encourage someone considering traveling abroad, traveling in general, to really hone in and see where that fear, nervousness, whatever you want to call it, is coming from, and whether or not you're up for the challenge of trying to conquer that. Because, like I mentioned beforehand, the world is immense and huge, and there's so much opportunity and possibilities open to you, and you don't necessarily always know that until you take that active step forward to try and figure out how you can really fully gauge yourself as an individual and your own personal growth, professionally, academically, spiritually, all of that.
Louie, thank you for that. I'll agree with you and add that I don't think you can really understand who you are until you understand what you are not, and when you go abroad and experience what you are not, it really gives you some insight about who you are and who we are here in the United States. I'm going to wrap us up, and I want to start by thanking our three students who took the time out of their day, or very early morning, Carmen, in London at 2 a.m. right now. Thank you for staying up for us, and James, for you getting up so early in the morning in Taiwan, and Louie for also calling us in the evening to join this Google chat. If there are any students that have been listening in, I think the message is clear. We all think you should be studying abroad and want you to explore the resources that are available, so please visit us at the Study Abroad office in Stevens Hall. Look for us at studyabroad.berkeley.edu. Come into the summer sessions office if you're interested in the global internship program. And if there are any alumni or friends of Cal listening, we also want to thank you for participating and supporting Berkeley Study Abroad. We give out over $1 million a year of scholarships, and much of that is due to the donations that you make in supporting study abroad. So thank you for helping these students finance their study abroad experiences. And I'll close it with Go Bears. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.